What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. My free hit is active for Game Week 34, and in this video I'm going to go through my first draft, let you know how it's looking, thoughts on alternative options as well, and all that good stuff. So let's get into it. So let's start with the defensive players. The theme of this draft is going to be target Leicester, Southampton and Ipswich for obvious reasons, but also where possible looking for low-owned players that for the most part non-free hitters won't own. Obviously, by the time we get to the deadline, a lot of free hit 34 drafts will end up looking the same because we're all ultimately targeting the same fixtures, same players, but there will be a lot of low-owned players that we can still pick despite how many drafts you see that have those same players. So in goal, I've gone for Leno. I'm pretty confident he will end up being in the final draft. I want to have at least one defensive player from Fulham, and he's obviously going to start. Southampton away, great fixture. And I also want one defensive player from Wolves. But that pick is pretty obvious, right? It's Ait-Nouri. So rather than go for Jose Sarr in goal, I've gone for Ait-Nouri as my outfielder and Leno in goal. I think that is fairly straightforward. At the moment, Sessegnon is also in from Fulham for a double up. I don't mind doubling or even tripling up on a defence on a free hit. Sessegnon at the moment is starting right wing. So he's listed as a defender, but he's starting in an attacking position. The only concern is that Harry Wilson is back now. And I'm recording this before Fulham have played in Game Week 33. So it might be that Sessegnon doesn't even start. Or if he does, that he comes off early again and Harry Wilson comes off the bench. And then all of a sudden, going into 34, you're concerned about his minutes. So I'm willing to take a bit of a risk, but not on someone that I don't think is going to start. So if I see the Fulham game in 33 and Harry Wilson just looks like he's going to come straight back into that position, then Sessegnon has to go. Right? I don't want to take that much of a risk. But in that case, I just probably put Robinson in there instead. Because Robinson's been really popular this season, but at the moment with engaged managers, his ownership's pretty low. So I quite like the double up on Fulham. So at the moment, I've got Leno and Sessegnon. If not, it probably becomes Leno and Robinson instead. And then I've gone for Trippier, because unless I go triple Newcastle attack, which I probably won't, I've got to pick at least one defender. I think Trippier and Schär are the lowest owned. And Trippier is on some set pieces as well. Now, Schär scored yesterday, so obviously he has some attacking threat as well. But he did go off with some hamstring issues, or at least at the end of the game he had some hamstring issues. So he'll probably be fine next week, and I could still pick him. But I think I want to go for the guy on set pieces. Livramento, Davern, obviously brilliant picks. A lot of people have at least one Newcastle defender at the moment, or they will have going into 34. But Trippier's ownership is not that high, so that's why he's in there. I'm more than happy to have Livramento in my own team for the rest of the season, but for free hit, I think I would switch to Trippier. So pretty happy with that defence, targeting all the teams that are going to get relegated. Fairly straightforward, but Sessegnon will probably become Robinson or someone else. So taking a look at the midfield, I know what your first thoughts will be. That is never a midfield that Andy would pick on free hit, but actually I don't think it will end up being that far from my final draft. There are some concerns I have, and I'll talk through them now, but just bear with me for a second before you completely write it off. So the midfield is Jota, Diaz, Salah, triple up on Liverpool, and then Palmer against Everton at home and Harvey Barnes against Ipswich at home. On the Liverpool players, I think right now that is the first choice front three. It doesn't mean it can't change because obviously Arne Slot's got other players that you could use instead, but that's the first choice front three, and they're playing a Spurs team at home that will have one eye on Europa League. There will be rotation for Spurs in that game. Salah is an absolute certainty. There is no way I won't have him, and he'll almost certainly be my captain as well. Everyone else is going to captain him, but I think you've got to pick your battles, and going against Salah captaincy when he's at home to Spurs is not a battle that I'm willing to take on. So Salah will definitely be in. I think with Jota and Diaz, it's interesting because at the moment I don't see Darwin Núñez getting into the first 11 until the league is won. So I'm actually pretty confident Jota will start as long as he's fit and available, but he always goes off early. Whereas Luis Diaz has probably got a bit more competition from Gakpo. Gakpo could start and Diaz could get benched, but when Diaz does start, his minutes are much better. So it's a bit of a tricky call between which one of Jota or Diaz is the best option, but actually I quite like both. Like there's a lot of players I don't have here, like Kluivert against Man United at home, another team that will have one eye on Europa League. And obviously he's on penalties as well. He was back in Game Week 33, so he's going to start against Man United. Mbeumo's just absolutely smashed it against Brighton, another penalty taker. But those kind of players just feel a bit boring compared to what I could pick on free hit. And I'm not saying that I won't go for them, because at the end of the day, they are just solid picks, and I don't want to go differential for the sake of it. But I do quite like the idea of tripling up on Liverpool. I think at a minimum, I will probably double up, but I'll find it difficult as to who to drop between Jota and Diaz. If anything, a slight knock going into that game might help make my decision. Like if Jota's a slight doubt, then I just go for Diaz, because he could even play up front. Even if Gakpo comes in, if Jota's a doubt, it probably won't be Nunez that plays number 9. So I quite like the idea of having double Liverpool. Triple if I can get myself to a place where I'm happy with it. But if I'm going to drop one of them, it'll be Diaz or Jota. Cole Palmer is pretty nailed, I would say, in this squad, unless I've got any concerns about his minutes. But Chelsea really can't afford to rotate too much in the Premier League because they are at risk of not making the Champions League. So I think Palmer will start that game. Everton is not an easy fixture, as we saw yesterday when Man City played them. But Chelsea are the home team this time. And Palmer's ownership is really low. And I think non-free hitters will not be looking to bring him back. If you don't own Cole Palmer, he's probably not part of your plans to bring in. So you've got a low-owned player that's close to 200 points this year, hasn't scored for years at this point, but we know what he's capable of, and his ownership's really low. So I think Palmer's pretty much locked in. And if I'm confident that Harvey Barnes is going to start again, he is a differential, right? Everyone owns Jacob Murphy. I definitely don't want to go for him because of his ownership. And also, he keeps getting subbed early as well. Yesterday it was 64 minutes. The game before it was 61. So when they're making a change, Murphy's coming off and Barnes is staying on. The only concern would be Gordon's building up minutes. So could it be Gordon left wing and Murphy right wing? There is some potential for Harvey Barnes to get dropped. But he's playing so well at the moment and his minutes are good. I would hope that he would continue to start. And he's probably had some transfers in based off what he did in game week 32. But overall, for engaged managers, his ownership's going to be super low. So having that attacker in there against Ipswich is something I would like to do. So ideally, Palmer, Barnes, Salah and Diaz will probably be nailed. But I do think as we get closer to the deadline, I know I'm going to have slight concerns about the minutes. I'm willing to take a risk on a player that's low owned, that's got a great fixture, but I really need them to start. Because if you go for like 3 or 4 players that might not even be in the 11, all of a sudden the free hit can look really bad. So I think Palmer, Salah nailed, Barnes semi-nailed, and Luis Diaz semi-nailed as well. Josh is probably the one I got the most concern about. In Burmo, Clivert are obvious picks, players like that I could put in instead. And then up front, I've got Isak against Ipswich at home and Cunha against Leicester at home. I think with Isak, it's a bit like Salah captaincy. You've got to pick your battles, and going against Isak at home to Ipswich is not a battle that I want to take on. He's such a good option this week. If Salah wasn't available for any reason, I think Isak would be my captain. So he's got to be in. And then with Cunha, it's just a matter of seeing if he gets back into the Wolves team against Man United away in game week 33. And if he does, I think he will stay there. And so he's probably the best option from that team in attack. If Cunha doesn't start again, and we've got concerns about his minutes going into game week 34, I think I'll probably just go to Strand Larsen and target the fixture. Chris Wood is a great option against Brentford at home this week. But I think I want to target Leicester with an attacker. And there's not really too many midfielders from Wolves that I can get excited about. Like, there are some options you could go for as massive differentials, but I wouldn't look at them and think they're better than any of the players that I've picked or any of the alternatives that I could go with instead. So I think Isak is nailed on, and Cunha is also pretty much nailed on as long as he starts in game week 33. So I think that looks pretty good. Let's talk about some alternatives. So just a quick alternative draft before I talk about the other options that are up for consideration. Potentially, I could drop a Newcastle defender and go for triple Newcastle attack instead. Because Ipswich at home is the kind of game where Newcastle could score 3, 4 or 5 goals. So I've gone for Murphy, Barnes and Isak. And in defence, I've actually got triple Fulham on this draft. So Leno, Sessegnon and Robinson. If I get cold feet on Sessegnon, which I think I probably will, I could just go for Joachim Andersen. Or I could just go for a different defender completely, which I'll talk about in a minute. On Jacob Murphy, I'll be honest with you, right? This is not me messing around or doubling down on the deadline stream and all that talk we had yesterday. I don't really want to go for him because his ownership is so high and he keeps getting subbed early the last couple of games because Gordon is back. I kind of want to back against that. But if I'm forgetting about ownership, I think triple Newcastle attack looks pretty good. If we got to Friday's press conference and Tyndall or Eddie Howe said Jacob Murphy's struggling a bit, we don't know if he's going to be available, straight away, I go Barnes, Gordon, and Isak. I'm pretty confident in that. But Jacob Murphy's ownership is just so high. It feels like one to back against. But like I said, if we forget about ownership, that triple up does look pretty good. In terms of other players up for consideration, I'm fairly certain Leno will be my goalkeeper. But Sanchez against Everton at home, pretty decent defensive fixture. Although there's something about Chelsea which I don't quite trust. Same with Brighton, by the way. Verbruggen against West Ham at home, not bad on paper. But I don't think I necessarily want to back their defence. Pope, if I don't go triple attack and I don't want to go for Trippier or Schär, absolutely an option from Newcastle. And Alisson as well. I think Liverpool defence against Spurs at home is actually pretty good. Alisson just doesn't scream excitement to me. I'd ideally like to go for a Liverpool defender rather than the goalkeeper if I'm going to back the defence. Defenders, Reece James and Cucurella, again, just targeting Everton at home. Reece James, look, there's something about him because of the nostalgia and how well he's done in the past. I'd love to pick him one last time, or at least one last time for this season. Right? He's not been in my team for quite a while, but he's not that same player for Chelsea at the moment. He's not marauding up and down the right wing. He's mostly playing in midfield. So if I'm choosing the more attacking defender from Chelsea, it's probably actually Cucurella. So if I was going to pick one right now, it probably has to be Cucurella, even though I'd love to pick Reece James instead. Estupinian, same thing with Verbruggen. I'm just not sure I would trust Brighton defence right now. Schär is an alternative to Trippier if he's fit. Trent Alexander-Arnold's the one I really want. If he gets 20 to 30 minutes off the bench against Leicester, and I'm confident he starts against Spurs at home, I'm pretty sure he'll go straight into my team. It's not a perfect defensive fixture, but Spurs will have one eye on Europa League, and we know what Trent can do from an attacking point of view. So if he gets minutes off the bench today against Leicester, I'll be very tempted by him. If not, I could go for Conor Bradley, but I think if Trent's back on the bench, there's just too many concerns over minutes. So if I wanted to play it safe, it would have to be Van Dijk. And then Milenkovic, I put on because of his goal threat and the fact he's at home. But do I really want to back him against Visser, in Burmo, etc.? Probably not. It doesn't feel like enough upside. So I've put him on the list because he's got good goal threat, but I don't see me picking him. In terms of midfielders, there actually doesn't feel like a massive amount of standout options that weren't already in the two drafts that I've shown you. So Matoma against West Ham at home, if I'm confident in his minutes, but I just don't see me going for a Brighton player. Anthony Gordon, if there was any indication that he would start, I'd love to go for him because the fixture is so good, his ownership is so low. Justin Kluivert, not exciting, but he's playing a Man United team that will have one eye on Europa League, on penalties. He could absolutely be in. I think, like for Bournemouth, it's a good fixture at home, Man United, right? They've been the better team this season. And so I think Kluivert's fine. You just look at him and think, I've owned him for so much already. Lots of people will have him in their squad still, despite the injury recently. It's just not exciting enough, but you don't need like 11 exciting picks. So I could see Kluivert making his way in, to be honest with you. Bruno Fernandes always plays. I think he could get benched at some point around the Europa League. I'm not that confident in it, but I just think it could happen. So I don't see me picking Fernandes. And then Mbeumo's just always great. Solid pick, starts, penalties, 90 minutes, blah, blah, blah. He could make it. It's just not that exciting. Forwards, Nicholas Jackson against Everton at home. I'd probably be concerned about his minutes just because I just don't see him playing 80 to 90 at the moment all the time, especially like not long back from injury. Danny Welbeck is probably the most, what's the word I'm trying to say? From Brighton is the player I'm most interested in because João Pedro got a red card. Welbeck will definitely start. He's probably now on penalties as well. Massive differential. I could see if I went 3-4-3 or if I was concerned about Cunha's minutes, didn't want to go for Strand Larsen, Welbeck could go in. West Ham at home is a good fixture. He's on penalties. He's definitely going to start. I like Welbeck as an option. Muniz and Jimenez, just because they're playing Southampton, but I just don't trust either of their minutes, so I think I'd probably ignore because of that. Evan Nielsen against Man United at home. Gakpo if I thought he was going to start instead of Diaz on the left wing. Strand Larsen I already mentioned. And I had to put Visser in there along with Mbeumo, but I don't see me picking Visser. He's not on penalties. It's an away game against Forest. If I'm going to go for an attacker from Brentford, it's probably in Mbeumo. I don't think I've missed anyone else. Like I'm looking at the teams that are playing next week, the midfielders and forwards to pick from. There's no one else there. Like Bowen or Fulkrug away to Brighton, it's just not good enough to go for on a free hit. So that's the alternative options. I really like that first draft that I showed you and the alternative one. I can see it being something along these lines. I think nailed on players, if I'm confident in their minutes, Leno, Aït-Nouri, Diaz, Salah, Diaz just about, Salah, Palmer, Barnes, Isak, Cunha. So a lot of this draft kind of picks itself. It's just about those fringe players then on top of that. So let me know how your draft is coming along. Give that a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll be back tomorrow for another video.